In the shadow of a poorly drained and damp building, two court ladies stood opposite one another. One of them was petite and dressed in a light yellow rukun, while the other wore a blue one. Light yellow rukun were worn by the palace kitchen staff, whereas the palace catalogers uniformly wore blue. The court lady in blue was trying to thrust a robe at the other woman, who was trying to refuse it. It seemed as if the woman in blue was asking her to fix the robe. "You can just do it when you're finished with work, can't you? Don't be so preposterous." The girl in the light yellow looked helpless, her face contorted as if she were about to cry. "Why doesn't she just shove her off and walk away if it's that much bother?" Jusetsu thought to herself as she watched the drama unfold. "This isn't like my usual requests. Stop being so stubborn. If you say no, I'm going to tell your father and destroy your family's store. You wouldn't dare." Letting out a grumble, Jusetsu crouched down at the roots of the flowers. It'd be a nuisance to get involved, so she decided to pretend not to see them and pass by. Jusetsu then stood up, came out of the shade of the trees, and spoke. "You're not a baby. I'm sure you can manage a bit of sewing by yourself." The two court ladies turned around, surprised. "Who on earth are you?" the girl in the blue raccoon asked in a tizzy. "I'm a simple court lady, as you can see by my dress," Jusetsu replied, puffing her chest out with pride. "That girl does not want to help you. Are you incapable of doing your own chores?" The girl in blue looked Jusetsu up and down suspiciously. "Why would I do something that I could get someone else to do for me? I don't need you to order me around," said the girl, before unexpectedly backing down with the curt comment, "Never mind, I'll let this one go." Jusetsu was disappointed with how the conflict fizzled out, but the girl in blue simply ignored the girl in light yellow and walked away, seeming to have already lost interest. The girl in light yellow let out a sigh of relief. Thank you," she said to Jusetsu. Her voice was as quiet as a little bird. She had quite a pretty face. Daughters of high-ranking officials and girls from respected families were often selected to become concubines and court ladies, but others were chosen for their appearance. This girl likely fell into the latter category. She's always giving me unreasonable requests like that, so I was in quite a pickle. But my family runs a rice cake shop, and her father is an assistant in the trade committee, so I couldn't afford to refuse. The trade committee was the authority in charge of the market, but it seemed wholly unlikely that one of their assistants would be able to destroy a rice cake shop just by picking faults with it. She was one of the palace catalogers, was she not? Does she normally come all this way to request these unceremonious tasks of you? Court ladies that worked as kitchen staff and cleaners worked everywhere, with a number of them assigned to each palace. However, the palace catalogers worked at the archives in the inner palace, which was some distance from the Heian palace. It's not me she comes here for. I think there's a eunuch here that she exchanges letters with. Oh. It wasn't unheard of for court ladies to be on intimate terms with eunuchs, but Jusetsu couldn't he understand why she couldn't have stuck to giving him the letter and left the poor girl alone. Perhaps she just couldn't resist bullying her while she was in the vicinity. The girl in the light yellow raccoon took another close look at Jusetsu's face. "So, which palace do you work for? We haven't met, have we? You look like you work in the kitchens, but I don't think I recognize you." There was an enormous number of court ladies around, so it wasn't unusual to come across an unfamiliar face. Jusetsu thought about giving the name of a random palace, but if the girl had friends there, she'd be in trouble. With this being the case, she simply replied, "The Yame Palace." "What? Are you the Raven Consort? I've heard that there aren't any court ladies there." "Why wouldn't there be?" said Jusetsu. The girl was right, there weren't, but a palace without any was almost unheard of, so she took Jusetsu's word for it. "What's the Raven Consort like, though? Is it true that she's just a young girl?" "She is 16 years of age." "Really? That's so young," commented the girl, seeming surprised. "Is it true that she has mystical powers? Can she predict the weather? And can she really predict who's going to die?" Jusetsu expected her to be a quiet girl, but she was surprisingly talkative. She reminded her of a skylark, chirping at the top of its lungs. Jusetsu kept quiet, and before long, the girl suddenly clasped her hands against her mouth. "Don't tell me that you're not allowed to talk about her?" she asked nervously. It'd be a nuisance to explain otherwise, so Jusetsu simply nodded. The girl nodded back at her repeatedly, then changed the subject. "Still, you're too pretty to be a court lady." "You're beautiful. What's your name?" I'm Juju. That was a common name out in the city. I am known by the name Jusetsu, the Raven Consort said. You have a funny way of talking, Jusetsu. Not even the concubines talk in that stuffy, old-fashioned way these days. Don't they? All this time, Jusetsu had been convinced that all upper-class people spoke like that. Having had a rough city upbringing, the previous Raven Consort had been the one to teach her this way of speaking. Her mentor had come from a distinguished family, but Jusetsu didn't realize that her speech would be so old-fashioned due to her advanced age. Then, perhaps out of concern for Jusetsu, who was looking shocked, Juju hastily cleared things up. But I think it suits you! Yeah, I mean, you've got that ethereal beauty thing going on, and you must have had a good upbringing, right? Jusetsu silently shook her head. Really? Well, you must have been chosen for your looks then. I'm sure you're the prettiest of all the court ladies. It's a real waste, said Juju. There are even some concubines who've never been called on, so there's no way a court lady could become a royal mistress. Juju let out a resigned laugh. Now that she'd come to the imperial estate, she would have to stay here for the rest of her life. Things might have been okay if she had the emperor's favor, but that was just a pipe dream for a court lady. I wouldn't want the emperor to summon me anyway. Jusetsu frowned as she remembered his sly, emotionless expression. Juju blinked at her in surprise. You're an unusual one, Jusetsu, she replied, but the moment she finished speaking, a voice came from the back entrance to the palace. Juju! Are you there? What are you slacking off for? Coming! Juju responded, flustered. She then turned to Jusetsu and added, See you later then, and thanks for earlier. However, when Juju set off toward the door, Jusetsu started following behind her. Huh? What's up? Juju asked. I am going to help you with your work. What? Don't you have your own jobs to do? I'm unoccupied for the moment, Jusetsu said. Jusetsu hadn't made this suggestion out of kindness, though. She just thought she might be able to gather some information while she was helping out. Juju seemed skeptical, but she brushed it off by reminding herself that the Yame Palace was no ordinary palace. They stepped inside the spacious kitchen. Several large stoves were positioned along the wall. A number of servant girls were in front of them, lighting them up. Lucky charms dedicated to the god of ovens were stuck to the wall behind the stoves alongside hanging scrolls, featuring couplets designed to ward off bad luck. The same was true for the Yame Palace, but the customs in the concubine's kitchen didn't seem much different from those in the city. Large jars stood lined up in a row along the opposite wall. At the long desk in the center, the kitchen ladies were mashing sesame seeds with wooden pestles and sifting the loose seed dust with a colander. Has breakfast not been served yet? Jusetsu asked. Of course it has. We're preparing dinner, Juju replied. This came as a surprise to Jusetsu. This early in the morning, she thought? That would have been unthinkable in the Yame Palace, where it was just Jusetsu and her maidservant. Hey, you can't go bringing a court lady from another palace here. As critical as the other court ladies were, Juju stuck up for herself. But she's my friend, and she wanted to help us. She took Jusetsu by the hand and led her into the corner to a rice mortar containing some roots that had been tossed inside. Why don't you do some hulling for us? Juju suggested, passing Jusetsu the pestle. How do you do that? You soak them in water once they've been ground up, let them dry, and then turn them into grains. Bracken grains. I see, Jusetsu thought to herself as she began striking at the bracken roots. There was another mortar beside her, so Juju went over to it and began moving her pestle in the same way. The satisfying sound of their pestles crashing against the hard surfaces echoed monotonously around the room. Did you come to the palace after the current emperor came to power? Jusetsu asked. Yeah, I've been here for a year. In that case, I doubt you know anything about the previous emperor and the one before that, do you? I haven't had any direct experience with them, but I've heard plenty of stories from court ladies who've been here for years. They're all about the previous emperor, though. Anything beyond that is ancient history. Jusetsu almost stopped moving the pestle, disrupting the sound it was making. What do you mean by plenty of stories? Well, this is the inner palace we're talking about, so as you'd expect, things happen. Stuff was particularly crazy when the previous emperor was around, with the Empress and everything. Juju took a quick look around, then lowered her voice. The Empress? The current Empress Dowager. She's in confinement now. Confinement? Shh! Hushed Juju, chiding Jusetsu for speaking so loudly. We'll get punished if we talk about it in the open. Don't you know what happened to her, Jusetsu? The Empress Dowager. I don't, Jusetsu replied, but she could tell by Juju's face that she didn't believe her. But you must have heard that the current emperor once had his position as heir taken away from him, right? Jusetsu shook her head, and Juju's eyes grew even wider. Her expression reminded Jusetsu of the skylark that would perch on the window grate back at her palace. This girl really did resemble a bird. Our emperor has had a really hard time of things. This is just a rumor, but they say the Empress Dowager murdered the emperor's real mother. That's why the emperor lost his position as heir, even though he was a crown prince. Apparently, Koshun had been forced into a corner of the inner court, almost as if he were imprisoned himself. But the emperor didn't give up. He gathered his strength and roused himself to action. He got the Northern Imperial Defense Army on his side, since it's their job to protect the emperor and his family, and they defeated the officials and eunuchs who had been pandering to the Empress Dowager. Juju told the story as if she saw it unfold with her own eyes. According to Juju, this was the talk of the town. Jusetsu had no idea. She had heard that there was some dispute over who would be the emperor's successor, but nothing past that. The previous Raven Consort never went into any more detail about it either. The emperor's real mother was called Sha, and she was a really beautiful woman. I hear that the emperor inherited her good genes, but I wouldn't know. I've never seen him with my own eyes. Juju blushed as her imagination went wild. Jusetsu wanted to tell her what an insipid young man the emperor was, but she held her tongue. She lived in the Hakaku Palace. Being the fourth consort, she ranked pretty low among her peers, you see. There were differences in rank even among the emperor's consorts. The Hakaku Palace wasn't a particularly big one either. The consort who was assigned to that palace was known as the Crane Consort, taken from the palace's name as it was written using the character for crane. But she was also only the fourth most important consort overall. She may have been the crown prince's biological mother, but her rank meant she was either low in status or lacked backing from anyone important. You said many things happened in the inner palace during the previous emperor's reign. What did you mean by that? Jusetsu asked, going back to the topic at hand. So the Empress Dowager murdered his birth mother, made the consort who was carrying the emperor's child have a miscarriage, cut off the tongues of the court ladies she didn't like, and so on and so forth. One consort got executed for having an illicit affair, another was poisoned by a fellow consort. The consort who administered the poison ended up hanging herself, and— Wait, ordered Jusetsu, interrupting Juju's flow. Juju gave her a blank look. What is it? Did you say there was a consort who hung herself? That's what I heard. She was found hanging from a beam in her room with a silk shawl around her neck. Juju's cute face scrunched up as she said that. What was her name? That consort. What was she called? Huh? I don't remember. Would the court lady who told you that story know? Yeah, I guess so. Hey, wait! Jusetsu cast away her pestle, grabbed Juju by the hand and headed toward the door. Take me to her. But what about work? Juju protested. That can wait. Jusetsu bolted out of the kitchen with Juju in tow, who followed in apparent resignation. Apparently, that court lady was one of the palace textile dyers, so she'd probably be in the washing area. Jusetsu just needed Juju to take her there. They went around to the back of the building where the court ladies lived and reached an area where a variety of fabrics were hanging up to dry. They could also see some court ladies standing next to a well, washing textiles in wash bowls. Juju called out to one of them, "Goo-goo!" That was a respectful way of addressing an older court lady. A woman in her 40s turned around. Her wrinkles stood out on her sunburned skin, but she still had a beautiful face. It was no wonder that she'd been chosen as a court lady. Did you need something? This girl wants to ask you something about the consort who hung herself. The woman gave Juju a skeptical look. Now? I don't mind, but I am busy, so you'll have to lend me a hand while we talk. She instructed Jusetsu to wash the wet clothes, and the Raven Consort followed along obediently. The older woman got Juju embroiled in helping out too. What's your name? Jusetsu? Well, I'm Ashu, she explained as she carried on with her duties. All the new court ladies want to hear about things like this. They just can't get enough of my spooky stories or juicy romantic gossip. She had looked unfriendly, or even a little angry, but that didn't seem to be the case. After all, there's not much else in the way of entertainment around here. Anyway, that woman who died by hanging was named Han. She was one of the Warbler ladies. I've forgotten what her position was now, though. The Warbler ladies were lower-ranking concubines, referred to with Ojo as their title. How many of them could there be? Han Ojo was a slightly fragile-looking beauty. She wasn't the type that stood out. She used to live in the third consort's palace. Only the highest-ranking concubines were given their own palaces. Lower-ranking ones just had a room in one of the palace buildings. The third consort was gifted the Jusetsu Palace and was bestowed with the title of Magpie Consort. This appellation, too, included the same character for magpie that was present in the palace's name. The title of Empress, incidentally, was the highest rank of them all. I wonder what that consort's name was. The magpie consort was young and beautiful, and to top it off, she was the daughter of the emperor's chief vassal. Being so young, she was ignorant of how the world worked. People said that made her a very arrogant and impudent girl. However, one day, she was given some poisoned broth and passed away. She was pregnant at the time, so the palace investigators did some serious research into what went on. As it turned out, Han, the Warbler lady, had some wolfsbane in her bedroom cupboard. Wolfsbane was a poisonous plant that contained a deadly poison in its roots. The day they found it, Han Ojo hung herself. She was found in her room, dangling from a beam by her own silk shawl. Then Ashu lowered her voice. Not long after, rumors started circulating that she'd come back as a ghost. You could apparently hear her weeping as she walked, trailing her skirt behind her, with her long hair down. Juju let out a fearful squeal. "Not this again, Gugu! You're just trying to scare her now. Plus, I bet you made that last bit up." "You'd be surprised, Juju. Some of us have seen her with our own eyes." "That Warbler lady, Han. Did she wear earrings?" Jusetsu interrupted. "Earrings? Jade earrings specifically?" Ashu tilted her head to one side. "I don't know about that. I only saw her once or twice myself. I never spoke to her directly. Should you really be making up rumors about someone you've never even spoken to? Just for the fun of it? Excuse me? I suppose death is just another form of entertainment in the inner palace," Jusetsu thought, shaking her head. "Never mind. What happened to Han's lady-in-waiting? How about her maid? Are they still in the inner palace?" Ashu seemed a little taken aback by Jusetsu's barrage of questions but responded anyway. "Probably, but I have no idea where they work. This is a huge place, you know." Jusetsu felt disheartened. She was certain that Han's lady-in-waiting or her maid would know whether she wore jade earrings, but for now, she had no conclusive evidence that the ghost was really Han Ojo. "Do you know if there has been anyone else who hung themselves or was strangled to death?" "I'm not entirely sure, but I have a feeling that there was. You know the Emperor's biological mother, Consort Sha, was poisoned as well, don't you? There was a consort who was beheaded in prison too. Poisoning is the most common, though. There are food testers, but things still slip through the cracks." Jusetsu thought to herself for a moment. Did Han really poison the magpie consort? She might have had a poison plant in her cupboard, but what if somebody else had put it there? Ashu grimaced. "That's a fair point. Anything is possible in a place like this. It's questionable whether the consort who drowned herself actually jumped into the pond by her own accord, and who knows whether that other one was really having an affair. If they find any evidence that's even remotely plausible, they don't dig any further." Jusetsu looked down at her washbowl. The water was so cold that it seemed to chill her to the core. How were things in the inner palace when the Emperor's grandfather was around? Jusetsu pulled herself together and continued to ask questions. "I haven't heard much about the Flame Emperor's era. The Flame Emperor was the posthumous title bestowed on the Emperor before last." The woman continued. "That's partly because I wasn't at the palace when he was around, but the fact that he was so old when he inherited the throne also has something to do with it. He never had many concubines in the first place, and things were difficult politically. It wasn't the right time to be messing around in the inner palace. The Flame Emperor ascended to the throne when the previous emperor, the last from the previous dynasty, abdicated to ensure an orderly transfer of power. On paper, he may have been given the throne, but it wasn't so simple in reality. He blackmailed the existing emperor, and even after rising in power himself, it took him a while to finish purging his opposition." But I have heard another story. Whenever the Flame Emperor paid a visit to his empress's palace, They'd leave the lanterns and lamps on all night long and spend all their time in the bright light. The reason for that was because ghosts would appear when night fell, the ghosts of the previous imperial family from the previous dynasty. Ashu spoke in a low voice with a serious look on her face. The ghost of the emperor had blood pouring from his mouth as he spouted out curses. On top of that, the empress, his heirs, and his young daughter would line up in front of the bed, all with their beautiful silver hair in disarray. People from this land tended to have black hair, but as mysterious as it was, the previous dynasty's imperial family all had the same silver hair color. The Flame Emperor was plagued by those ghosts until the day he died. He had killed too many of them. Her last few words had been so quiet that Jusetsu could hardly make them out, but they carried with them a hint of condemnation. After the Flame Emperor ascended the throne, he murdered the previous dynasty's emperor, who had given him his rank. Not only that, but he also ordered the killing of the entire imperial family, including the women and children. He'd done this to eliminate the root of evil, but even Jusetsu remembered hearing the murmurs of city folk saying that he'd gone too far before she came to live in the inner palace. I won't be able to sleep after hearing that story, Juju said in a tearful voice. Ashu finally let out a laugh, then made another attempt to scare her. You never know. They might still be here in the inner palace. They could be visiting your bed next. Jusetsu suddenly rose to her feet and rubbed her wet hands against her skirt. Joking about the dead doesn't appeal to me, she thought to herself. That was very helpful. Sorry for disturbing you. Please accept my apologies. With that, she turned away and left the washing area. Juju followed after her, flustered. Are you okay, Jusetsu? You don't look too well. I don't? Jusetsu patted her cheeks. Are you bad with scary stories too? It'd be so freaky if a ghost appeared, wouldn't it? It's not like we can leave this place. I'm not scared of ghosts, Jusetsu explained. It's just upsetting. Wait, really? I'm totally petrified of them. Juju clung to Jusetsu, acting afraid. Then, the two of them returned to the Heian Palace kitchen and carried on hulling the bracken roots. By the time they sufficiently crushed the roots and submerged them in the water, it was well past noon. It was Jusetsu's first time hulling with a pestle, and her palms were red by the end of it, but it was easier work than the labor she was forced to do before coming to the inner palace. When she left the kitchen, Juju chased after her. Take this, she said, offering her some mugwort rice cakes with taro leaves underneath. A thank you for helping me. Thank you, Jusetsu replied. These sweet treats had likely been served for tasting purposes, a privilege that only the girls who worked as kitchen staff got to enjoy. When Jusetsu sat on the earthen jar next to her and brought a rice cake to her mouth, the scent of the mugwort filled the air. Juju stuffed her cheeks with her portion too, and her eyes narrowed with glee as she enjoyed the delicious flavor. Are you sure you're allowed to be away from your post for this long? She asked Jusetsu. Juju realized her new friend spent the whole morning at another palace. It won't be an issue. I guess the Yami Palace must be pretty chill. I'm jealous. I wish I worked there too. Not that this place is particularly strict, but... And you get to steal some food, Jusetsu thought as she brought yet another rice cake to her mouth. Oh, but I bet it's scary there, isn't it? I heard there's some kind of monstrous bird in there. The bird is certainly unique, but I wouldn't describe it as scary. Huh? Really? Once Juju finished eating her rice cakes, she casually looked up at Jusetsu, who had turned to the side. She reached out her hand. Wait, are you going gray early? You've got some gray hair. Jusetsu quickly jumped to her feet and walked away from Juju, covering her hair with her hand. I'm sorry, apologized Juju. Are you embarrassed about it? It's not like it was enough to worry yourself over. Perhaps it was just the way the light was shining on it. It's not that, Jusetsu said as she retreated, keeping her hand on her hair. I'm going back now, thank you for today. With that, Jusetsu rushed back toward the passageway. Juju watched her as she left, a vacant look on her face. The drum sounded to announce that it was midday, and Koshun vocalized his relief as he leaned back in his chair. This meant that his official duties in the outer part of the imperial estate were now finished for the day. It was also time for his officials, who had arrived before sunrise, to go home. Your Majesty? Chief Secretariat Yuan whispered in Koshun's ear just as he was getting up to leave the room. The Grand Chancellor had a magnificent white beard and previously acted as the Grand Master for the Crown Prince. The man had been close to the Emperor since he was very young. Things don't seem to be settling down in the Teirui Palace, he told the Emperor. The Teirui Palace was the detached palace where the Empress Dowager lived in confinement. I know. Mayin? Koshun called out, ushering an intelligent-looking man in his 40s to his side. How's the money situation? We haven't found anything suspicious so far, replied the man. He was a scholar and also served as the vice minister in the palace's financial affairs department. I'm sure she's hiding her fortune somewhere, though. It's no surprise considering how overzealous she was in issuing official titles by imperial decree. The Empress Dowager had constantly lined her own pockets by taking money from people in exchange for government positions. There was a discrepancy between the fortune that had been confiscated from her and her estimated wealth. There must be some eunuchs pulling the strings, said the Emperor, looking at the chief of the palace staffing department. The chief bowed his head in acquiescence. I know. The Empress Dowager wasn't the sort to meekly settle into a life of confinement. This woman had seduced and even intimidated the previous emperor into letting her take charge of both his external and internal affairs, and even drove Koshun to lose his position as heir. There were evidently some eunuchs who still maintained ties with her. At the end of the day, she does not understand what a compassionate fellow you are, Your Majesty. Once they'd finished devising some remedial measures, An exited the room, stroking his white beard and sighing as he went. Then, Koshun headed to the inner court where he lived, taking Aisei along with him. Even with his work in the outer court done, there were still jobs he had to complete in the inner court. The Emperor had a lot of business to attend to. However, he hadn't allowed the Empress Dowager to live because he was compassionate. When he sent his troops from the imperial army rushing into the palace of the Empress Dowager, who was at that time the Empress, he didn't behead her, no. But that was only because he didn't have the authority to get away with something like that at the time. If he'd had the powerful Empress killed, the backlash would have been immense. He thought of it like a game of Go. You couldn't seize power with just one stone. Just as a player had to take away their opponent's Go stones one by one, Koshun slowly and steadily gained power in the imperial court from that point on. But now, he did have the ability to punish her. As the Emperor, he could use his will alone to execute her for a made-up crime, just as the Empress Dowager once could. That was what having power was all about. Despite having the ability, Koshun wasn't going to abuse his authority like that. He wanted cold, hard proof that would justify a punishment. Koshun silently gazed ahead of him. He could see the Gyoko Palace standing there, with his main residence inside of it. Far into the distance, too far away for him to make out, stood another palace named the Gyoso Palace. Long abandoned and deserted, its roof had fallen into disrepair, and its walls were blackened by mold. When Koshun was 13 and had his status as heir ripped from him, they forced him out of the Crown Prince's palace and moved him there instead. Then, at the age of 18, he marched right into the Empress's palace. Until he managed to regain his status as the Crown Prince, Koshun was destitute and barely had enough food to survive. If it hadn't been for Aisei and his other close advisors who secretly supported him, anything could have happened. His mother, Consort Shah, was killed by poisoning before Koshun lost his heirship. One of the Empress's eunuchs framed her lady-in-waiting as the culprit, and she was promptly executed as well. Still, there wasn't any clear proof that indicated that the Empress was behind the plot either. If Koshun were to kill the Empress Dowager without concrete evidence, that would have made him no different than her. If he bowled through with his demands, things would eventually backfire. The Emperor wasn't going to repeat the mistakes of the Empress Dowager. He wanted an undisputable reason that made perfect sense in terms of both law and logic. He wanted it so much that he could almost taste it. Some described Koshun as a rational man. They said that he wasn't swayed by emotion and respected the law of the land. Some would also call him kind-hearted. Koshun believed both of these assumptions were wrong. None of them knew about the intense emotions that gnawed away at him. He was aching to see the woman dead. A room inside the Gyoko Palace was filled with the scent of tea. Issei set the kettle on the stove and let the water boil. He took a pinch of salt out of its container and added it to the water. The way his movements flowed was beautiful to watch. Then he spooned the boiled tea into a cup and reverently placed it in front of the emperor. "Enjoy, master." The gentle steam and the pure aroma of the tea enveloped Koshun as he took his first sip. The tea felt smooth in his mouth and filled his belly with warmth when he swallowed it down. All the tension in his body slowly dissipated. "Your tea really is the best," he commented. Issei's eyes narrowed with delight. "That means a lot." Koshun met the eunuch at the age of 10 and immediately recruited him as his personal attendant. Issei knew Koshun's preferences and opinions better than anyone. "How did it go?" the emperor asked, not specifying exactly what he was referring to. After all, you never knew who was listening in from outside the room. Issei would know what he meant. "The osmanthus mark is that of the Yo family," Issei replied, sticking to only the essential details. Koshun had got him to look into the birthmark-like blemish on Jusetsu's arm. If those marks were branded into her skin, she must have been one of their servants. Correct. Koshun was quiet. Those marks, which looked like inflamed skin, were burn scars. That family branded their servants as if they were livestock. Jusetsu once worked as a servant for the Yo family. That means the current head of the family works as a low-ranking official. His predecessor from many generations ago worked as a vice minister for the board of personnel. But since then, none of them have been successful in the imperial examination. If you didn't pass the imperial exam, you couldn't gain a position as a high-ranking official. Many notable families had gone down in a similar way. Their reputation is less than satisfactory. Despite his position, they've got plenty of money. There are rumors that they are involved in salt trafficking, and it's said that they treat their workers horribly too. Apparently, Jusetsu was sold to them at the age of 4. Koshun frowned. "At such a young age? I couldn't find out any information about her life before that point. It wasn't clear which vendor they bought her from." People ended up as servants for myriad different reasons. Some had been working for a family for generations. Others were poor farmers from deprived rural areas. Some belonged to peoples that had been hunted down, and some came from good families who had fallen into poverty. Going by Jusetsu's appearance, however, you wouldn't have been a fool to believe that she was a princess whose status was so distinguished that she'd been sealed away in a secluded inner room for her safety. "I don't think it's a good idea to get involved with a girl of unknown origins, personally," Issei said. "I understand your concerns, but I must." Issei pursed his lips. His expression suggested that although he would follow whatever Koshun said, he wasn't convinced. It wasn't the first time Koshun had seen it. "It's not like the Empress Dowagers' cronies will know why I'm visiting the Raven Consort, and they probably don't know what to do. It's better that the Raven Consort makes her presence known. That'll work in my favor." Then, Koshun lowered his voice even more to pose Issei a question. "Have your people said anything to you?" "The eunuch and court lady in question have not made any moves as of yet," Issei whispered back. Koshun had placed several of Issei's subordinates to work undercover in strategic places as spies. "It'd make life easier for me if they got to work right away,"